Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. I think I may have repaired some of my sound recording issues on here. I did some resets in my computer, so um, I wanted to do this video. I promise I'm not going to make it very long, but I wanted to go over some things that I've kind of been not mentioning for a long time. Not so much personal things as you're probably used to, but definitely not just the my thoughts on arts and pop culture and stuff of that nature that I've been doing reviews and such for quite a while now. It's been a while since I've done a very personal video, and I don't really intend to go back down that soul-bearing path anytime real soon again, unless I can help it. I'm healing much more in that area. Most of my problems are financial and just dealing with one crisis after another in the in my empirical existence rather than soul angst, so to speak. So but what I'd like to address is that one thing that I was building towards with my series of videos here, trying to gradually build towards as I gained an audience and more confidence and more information, was to address a lot of socioeconomical, sociopolitical concerns that I have that I feel need to be talked about, that I feel like I have views on that may be of value to someone. I may be wrong. I may be in a vacuum. However, there is a community on YouTube. Sometimes there's a bit of tension and infighting and internecine conflict in it, but I keep up with it daily, and it's a community that basically is pushing for socially and politically progressive values and trying to address all forms of inequality in our culture, of which there are numerous. I've stated my views in passing and allusions in numerous videos, and I've done, the what is freedom, what is truth videos from a philosophical slant, and I've done the Disunited States of America, which has probably been the least viewed of almost all my videos. I don't know if it's the graphic of Captain America's shield with the blood on it. I was appropriate at the time, I thought, and still is, and it was coming right on the end of the Falcon Winter Soldier. Maybe a couple of people started watching it and was hoping for it to be about that, and it turned out to be, me voicing my innermost thoughts and views on the state of our world. But in any case, it failed, and it didn't get any attention, which in a way is worse than getting negative attention. But I realize I don't have much of a following, and the networking that I have done has not been in that area. It's been in my observations on films and comic books, music, and of course my personal life, and of course my own works, my own art, Flickr Street, which is still my life's work, my passion, and a lot, if maybe all, of my I guess real interviews about the world, and not just about myself and my life, of course, but also just about the world itself. They're kind of reflected in Flickr Street. It's like my life, as I've said before, the way I see the world through an analogical mirror, and that's a valuable catharsis and outlet. For many years, Flickr Street has been heading towards, within the storyline, a revolution in the America of that world. And that was always my intention, was that there was eventually going to be an alteration, a sea change in the way of life of these characters and their world, and specifically based in America, because that's where most of my action is based. But since the late 1990s, I felt that was probably the way things were going to go. So I've set up a lot of kind of signposts for it, foreshadowing within the stuff I'm writing. Of course, no one sees it. No one's been exposed to it. All of it, the little bit of it people have read now is on my Facebook pages for the prose there and the character bios and some scenarios. And then I'm about to load. I've been saying this for 6 months. I'm about to load this massive document onto my official website. I'm on my final. I'm almost clearing the final hurdles for getting it on there, and one of it really is one I don't need to have in place, but I've erected it for myself. I'm determined. I want to add a better graphic sense to the site, so that entails me completing some specific pieces of artwork, and I have just not been physically and mentally up to it or focused enough to finish the ones I need to finish, inspired, what have you, because when I do finish visual art, it takes a lot out of me. I put a lot into it. I go into that zone or whatever, and that was very easy and natural for me all through my younger life. That's what I did. I didn't have a social life growing up. I didn't go out like other kids and teenagers did. I stayed in my room. I listened to music. I read comics, but mainly my ritual for a long time, because I eschewed television for a while. You'll believe it or not, back then. But anyone who grew up with the banality of 80s mainstream television can surely sympathize with that choice. But I would crank up Black Sabbath or whoever I was passionate for at that moment, music, and there was a lot of it, and I would draw. I would also write and take notes, and I would kind of like act out my stories to myself the way I've described me and my childhood friend Thomas Davis would do when we had this Dynamite comic project when I was in elementary school and early junior high. But mainly I would draw. And it wasn't just like Dynamite comics, as we called it then, characters that some of which are I'm still using in Flickr Street, albeit, updated and amended. It was everything. I was working on my craft. I was taking art classes in school, and getting training in high school, junior high and high school art. I wasn't getting a lot of formal training. I later did. But I was largely an autodidact, and of course comics were my jumping off board, comic book art. But then I began drawing from life. I began doing the things in my art classes that I was learning. I started filtering them into my own storytelling and just my own craft. And so by the time I was about 18, 19 years old, I was at a very high level, I thought, especially to have been given with as little formal education as possible. Then I went into college. I took some private art courses, and then I went to college on and off for a few years, and I gained a lot more knowledge and more techniques and more equipment, more tools and supplies to work with. So by the time I was maybe 22, 23, I was at an overall height of my craft, but I was losing more and more interest in the drawing and painting and finished pieces side of it. I was leaning more heavily into the art, and of course, by that time, I was wrapped up in writing and performing music, which seemed the most immediate to me, and it still does. And I think I have ability in that area, but it's not the one I'm the most naturally talented at. I think I have more of a way with words within writing and creating, or journalism, or whatever, expressing myself. And more natural talent in drawing and visual art. So the visual art part has become, I've shelved it for long periods of time, and so I need to, when I do return to it, I pour a lot into it, and it's generally well received, but it's really just building blocks to my story, to a bigger world that I'm trying to gradually put out into this world. So one thing I never thought would happen in my lifetime, or I hoped not, was that as my story became more and more dystopian and apocalyptic and more inevitably headed toward a radical revolution or realigning of the world consciousness, human consciousness, I never thought that these things would start in real life, the world around me. I didn't believe that they would begin exceeding the scenarios I was positing in my stories. To me, those were still the province of 1970s cautionary science fiction stories and films, and some cautionary science fiction stories and films before and after the 70s. But the 70s was really when I first kind of gained awareness as a human being and was exposed to art, and that stuff had a huge influence on me. A lot of people, there were a lot of fears in that period of overpopulation and starvation, nuclear war, war in general, government corruption, on and on and on. And my generation, especially the generation before mine, the boomers, didn't listen, didn't heed these lessons and adjust their lifestyles accordingly. If anything, the generation before me became even more avaricious and greedy of getting their piece of the pie of our limited, dwindling world resources. Hence, more wars and more political corruption, more environmental devastation. So now, as they said back in the day, now the chickens are coming home to roost, so to speak, and it's rough. So now this stuff is happening faster and faster. The environmental decay, the government decline, the social contract being violated, people being overwhelmed with fears and paranoias, and their intrinsic human rights being further and further infringed upon. People are being massively surveilled, massively censored. It's all coming true. All these horror stories are coming true. So I am just kind of just going along with it and doing my mirroring of it in Flickr Street now. It's no longer prophetic or just an alternate reality or just could happen or it's happening. So the prophets who warned of these things when I was a kid, not just in prose and films, but also in comic books. And Jack Kirby was a huge prophet of the direction the world was going in, like in his series OMAC, the world that's coming. And it was a fearful world, and that world is more or less here. Or at the very least, we're at the tipping point, about to, fall into this chasm, never to return. So these concerns are things that I need to be able to voice in an uninhibited way, in my opinion, for them to be effective. It's one thing explaining all this from a philosophical viewpoint. It's another thing getting down to brass tacks and naming names and fighting for causes and espousing causes, and seeing where we're at and who our allies are and who our allies are not, and what the fuck are we going to do, and can we do anything to save and improve our world and our way of life, our survival as a species, as our empire crumbles, the American empire. So I realized that by the time I was getting ready to start talking about these things in videos uninhibitedly, if that's a word, yes, which I cannot do on Facebook because I'm either censored by Facebook for inciting violence or promoting violent, dangerous individuals. I was put in Facebook jail last week for 3 days because I posted in a music group I own. I posted a Burzum song. Now, I posted it, and a few people liked it. And about 24 hours later, I went to look at it, and I realized I had a typo in it. So, era came out as ear. So I changed it, and I guess that triggered the algorithm because then I was put in jail immediately, and I was told that I was promoting violent or dangerous individuals with my content. I'm assuming the algorithms have been programmed to reject Burzum because of Varg Vikernes' reputation, and he's been banned completely from YouTube platforms. He does have a new channel. I'm not going to tell you the name of it. I don't want to get him booted again, but it's obviously him, and I hope he continues. And it's really, he's not talking much about his politics, if any. He's really just performing his music, talking about his music. he should not be deplatformed. I never thought Donald Trump should be deplatformed. And I'm aghast that a lot of the political channels, the progressive political channels, and that word progressive is getting adopted more and more horribly every day. The true leftist people who I follow on YouTube are getting censored more and more often. What I'm going to do with this video is in the description below, I'm going to link up all the channels that I recommend. If you want to go down this path, if you're not already on it, open the rabbit hole, dig in, and just hurry yourself in. It's a different world, but you know what? It's a more hopeful world, even though a lot of it is us sitting around talking about how hopeless things are. But we're being real. I mean, it's real news. It's real facts. It's what we're really dealing with and what people are really doing and who our real allies are in a struggle for some kind of justice, socioeconomic, racial, every kind of justice, environmental, whatever. All the ones that the progressives with the quotes around them have been espousing since the rise of Bernie Sanders. And they're the right ones to espouse, but the quote-unquote progressives, or as one of my favorite channels host says, the cul-de-sac progressives, they have they're only lip service. There's no action. There's no direct action. There's no legislative action. They're worthless sellouts. And it's time everyone started calling it for what it was. So the people I respect the most that I follow on this platform, YouTube, are the ones that do that day in and day out. There are just a handful of them, but it is growing. There are more coming around that I'm being exposed to. And then there's occasionally some that I'm exposed to, and at first I'm like, oh, wow, these guys are onto something too. They're right there with us. And then I find out, that they're bad faith actors, as the term commonly used in these circles now. Again, I'm not going to name names yet, but what I am going to say is because of following these channels being censored due to sensitive topics that they are verboten by the YouTube algorithms, such as the pandemic. There's quite a few other ones, but that's the biggest one that you really have to watch what you say and how you say it, or you'll be banned, you'll be demonetized. Now, I don't plan on monetizing my channel. I don't have enough followers to monetize it. So, but there are people who have thousands and tens of thousands of followers, and we're depending on some of it for an income, and rightfully so, because they were producing quality content. Some of it in studios, some of it in this kind of setup. The whole spectrum, whatever is technologically available to you to get your message out. It's just like punk rock was. I can't completely play this instrument, but I got a cheap guitar and distortion pedal and a little amp. I'm going to try to bang it out and write a song because I have something to say. And that DIY indie spirit, no matter how much it gets co-opted by the mainstream, by the corporatocracy over the decades, it's still there. It still exists in my generation and in the generation after me. I think the boomers have just about completely given up on it, but there are some that haven't, and I definitely give props to them. Some of them are close friends of mine. But with the millennial generation, more and more people are seeing through the illusion. And like Alejandro Jodorowsky said in Holy Mountain, it's all Maya. It's all illusion. Pull the camera back. Well, that's what we're doing. And what we're seeing is the festering ugliness and reality and desperation of our situation as a country, as a culture, as a people, right up in the surface in your face. And it's, people don't want to look at that, or they look at it and they literally, there's cognitive dissonance. They literally don't see it. They don't allow themselves to see it. Their eyes become opaque, like Emily in the Beyond, and it's crazy. I've witnessed this, not just online, I've witnessed this in the flesh. I have seen people who tell me they are they stand for this value. And then one of their sacred cows or politicians they put on a wrongfully given pedestal blatantly, egregiously violates those principles with, just arrogantly. And it's caught on video. It's right there with witnesses. And I have shown this kind of person that before. And I'm like, look at your hero. Your hero is a villain. Don't support this person. Don't vote for this person. Don't donate to this person. They're against everything you hold dear. They are influencing the world. They are directly harming your way of life, your economic security, and your health, mental, physical, etc. Why would you devote any energy to that kind of individual? And and one friend in particular, he glazed out, and he said, "I won't look at it. I'm going to vote for her. I won't look at it. Okay, fine. Maybe it's the truth. I'm not. No." And when I saw this, I was, wow. It's been like almost 4 years. I'm still stunned. It's been over 4 years. I'm still stunned. And since then, I've seen it happen a few other times. Maybe not as dramatically and blatantly, a few inches from my face, but it's the same thing. Online, I see it every day. And I talk a lot about comic books, and I speak a bit about superheroes. And it's really ironic that the mainstream comic book industry, who is making their living off the idea of the superhero, of heroic values, in their personal political lives, they worship people who are clearly villains. That irony has struck me ever since the 2016 election. I was surprised at how many people who write these stories about, honor and nobility and helping other people and saving the world, and then they're out there voting for people who are doing the absolute polar opposite of those things, who are completely destroying everything we hold dear, with no consequence, no punishment for their misdeeds, even though that's the kind of thing these people write about. And they mindlessly, gladly give energy to these people, and it's sick. So I disconnected on many levels from a lot of the mainstream comic book industry, and also this is true of the genre fiction industry. I noticed this, in that faction as well. Those were two areas where I had a lot of friends, a lot of, Facebook friends, a lot of acquaintances. Not all of them I knew personally. Some I did, a few I knew in person. But I had to go, whoa, we are fundamentally ideologically incompatible, and they're not listening. They don't want to hear it. And so my refuge has been these kind of channels on here to see who's out there that's actually talking about this stuff. And, once again, to beat another dead horse, these are the kind of things that I talked to my ex-fiance about all the time, and she and I were on the same page. She was further left than me. She was pretty much off the grid. But she did not want to get entangled in the minutia of politics and the madness of it. But her views on what it's doing to the world and all the negative things that are happening and what could be done or should be done, she and I were totally on the same page. Now, her path now is a more esoteric path to address these feelings. That's fine. I wish her well. But mine, I go into the esoteric area and the artistic areas to express these things. Just as she does, but there is a part of me that is still attached to the idea of our empirical reality. What can we do to affect change, or what can we not do, and what should we do as a consequence of being helpless? And that's why I would like to throw my hat into the arena and put my voice out there. And like I said, when I started doing these videos in vain in September of last year, I said, I know my voice is nothing. It's just a little ping in an ocean of electronic pings around the planet. But that's okay. Caitlin Johnstone, I named a name, who's a left-wing journalist that I respect a lot. She said, it doesn't matter if you have the right equipment or 100% articulate or have all your shit together. Put your voice out there. Start reading. Start writing. Start talking. Start expressing yourself. Going against the grain. Peeling back the narrative. Pushing against the dominant narrative. I'm paraphrasing her, but that's essentially her philosophy. And to me, that's the same thing as the DIY punk rock ethos was. And now everything's kind of come full circle. It's no longer about hardcore music and black leather and how you dress and wear your hair. Though obviously all that's influenced me personally, aesthetically, but it's really within. And now it needs to be without. It needs to be shared. It needs to be spoken. Truth to power. We must speak truth to power, and we have to be unceasing about it. And it's hard to do. It's hard to be brave, and it's hard to invest yourself. And it's easy to be cynical and say nothing's ever going to change, fuck politics, and all this other stuff. Some people who can say fuck politics, like my ex-fiance, at least I know where she's coming from. There are many people who are just like, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to change anything. I can't, or they're totally hopeless. And not only are they so hopeless and cynical as far as their own impotency in affecting positive change, but they want to bring you down too. They want you to give up as well. Like, that person can't win. Nobody's going to vote for them. And it's like, well, as long as you have decided that you won't vote for them, then you're part of the problem. So no, they won't win. If everyone espouses your cynical, it can't happen attitude, then no, it can't and it won't happen. So as cynical as I am about the oppressive forces in our world, I refuse to give up hope completely. I'm not a Pollyanna. I'm not overly optimistic about how our chances are going forward. But I think that's part of being positive and hopeful is you got to know how bad things really are. If you don't know you have cancer, you can't diagnose or treat it. If you have it and you refuse to be treated, you're going to die most likely. And so if we refuse to see the cancer that is our socio-political, socio-economic apparatus in the United States and elsewhere, then there's no way we can ever improve or address it or change it or overthrow it and replace it or whatever we're going to do that's going to ameliorate the horrid damage that these greedy bastards are perpetrating against us. It's all about capitalism and money and dominance and power and war and pain, and keeping people ignorant and impoverished. That's why we have a mainstream media, I think, to keep us in fear. I read and thought about a lot of these things back in the 1990s, and it's why I never signed up for a political party. I've never been a member of a political party, and I'm extremely proud of that. And during the last two elections, when that subject came up because I avoid it with certain people, I was castigated. I was scorned. There was resentment and vitriol hurled toward me. Like, how can you say you're not this, this, this? And a lot of it I got not so much from the, horrid, blatant right-wingers, but the ostensible left-wingers who really are right-wingers. The conservative mindset that I grew up around in the 1980s, it was the Republicans. We all hated the Republicans, but we couldn't really speak out against the Republicans because they were running things. So a lot of rebellious sentiments came out. There was a lot of excessive art and lifestyle. We were basically trying to all rebel and be individuals, even if we were all the same a lot of times, because that was what we were under, those conservative values of pro-war and pro-censorship and sex negativity, indifference to poverty and AIDS and things of that nature on a massive scale. The Reagan-Bush era was a defining point for America going forward, and not in a good way. And there seems to have been no turning back. So that mindset espoused by Republicans, this is the atmosphere now fostered in the 2020s by Democrats. We all know Republicans are scum. I don't even think of them anymore. They're not on my radar. Democrats who I have occasionally allied myself with in the past, I no longer do, and no longer ever will after the debacle of this last election. So even then, I only had a very tenuous, faith in a handful of individuals. So that is no more. And they are pro war, pro censorship, enabling poverty and disease and death. So all across the globe, but especially at home, we're like a third world country with no health care in the middle of a global fucking pandemic. Democrats don't care, those in power, but I think most Democrat voters don't care. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up, but they're afraid to break away from the tribalism. Yeah, the Democrats have sold us out, but I'm a Democrat, man. I can't be a Republican. It's like you can be whatever you fucking want to be. You don't have to be a member of a political party. You don't have to be part of this madness. You can push back against this madness. You can find a better path or help construct a better path. And so anyway, with censorship running rampant on YouTube among these channels and individuals and personalities that I respect and follow, one thing that has emerged is this venue called Rockfin, which is another video sharing platform that has no censorship. Already people have tried to smear Rockfin by saying, it's all right-wing and alt-right and Trumpers, and it's totally not true. It's dominantly, at least if you're, depending on your interests, depending on my interests, which dovetail with a lot of other people's interests on there, really it's more of an outlet for leftist voices. Now there is a segment that is devoted to conspiracy theories of sorts, and most of those people are right-wing, but not all of them. I mean, in the 80s, conspiracy theorists were considered left-wing. The 90s changed that, regardless, there's that venue there, but it's clearly labeled what it is. It's not saying, here's the news, here's the truth. It's like conspiracy theories over here. You guys can talk about it all you want, but we're not going to pull you. Whereas on YouTube, you can't do it. Everyone's going to go the way of Alex Jones. And why? Why? Because they have to control the narrative and make sure we think exactly what they want us to think. And they want us to lose all faith in our individual choice to think for ourselves, react for ourselves, research things, and act accordingly with agency on our own fucking lives. And, don't listen to this conspiracy theory because it will influence you to do something bad. Don't listen to this news outlet because it will make you do this. Don't listen to this politician. It will make you do that. And it's like, okay, do we not? I mean, do we have so little faith in ourselves and our fellow humans that we're all mindless morons who have to be led by the hand? Maybe many people are, and that's part of the problem. But those people who are telling you those things, they are exploiting that and treating us as though we're all like that. We're all idiots, and we can't make up our own minds. I'm going to decide for you what is good, says Mark Zuckerberg, and it's like, no, you're not going to fucking decide what's good for me. And neither is Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, or any of those clowns. I can decide it for myself. And I think more and more people, if they are empowered with the truth, no matter what their socio-cultural leanings, are going to make at least somewhat informed and wise decisions, at least for themselves, maybe not for their entire community. A lot of people are lost, and they're going to stay lost. But if we give up on everyone who doesn't follow the narrative, then we're fucked, because we're not just giving up on the Trumpers and the QAnons. We're giving up on people like me. We're giving up on far leftists. We're giving up on revolutionaries and great minds and great thinkers who might be able to help us better this hell we're living in. So Rockfin is an alternative. So that's a long, as you're used to with me, a very long way of saying that I won't be doing any political videos, oriented videos after today, after this one. I won't be mentioning these things except maybe in some snide allusions in some of my reviews, as I usually do. I can't resist, but I won't be doing them on YouTube at all. So that my plans have changed. I'm going to do them all in Rockfin. I've signed up for Rockfin. I have a profile. I have a channel. More or less, but I haven't. It has no content. It has no setup. And so I'm going to dive into that in coming weeks and get myself set up and endeavor to do these kind of videos, my usual lo-fi nonsense, and push it out onto Rockfin, where I think I might have more specifically receptive response. B, I might be able to interact with this community that I respect, that I'm really on the periphery of, more like an observer. And C, I can speak in an unfettered fashion about these things. Free speech is free. It's not. There's not a price that comes with it. There are consequences of free speech in the real world, but that doesn't mean it should be curtailed or stopped. Just deal with the consequences. People are afraid of other people's views. They're afraid of anything that goes against the approved narrative line, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. It used to be like, well, in America we have total freedom and blah blah blah, and we're fighting for freedom and we're killing people for freedom, but it's not an American thing. It's a human right. It's a human power to speak for ourselves. We own ourselves, our own bodies, our own minds. No one else. This is the only things we concretely, empirically own in this world is our own life, our own mind and body. And you choose whether to let that be broken or programmed or altered, or controlled or enslaved. You make that choice. You can always be free in your mind, even if you're in shackles. It's true of people throughout history, political prisoners, everyone from Nelson Mandela to Julian Assange. They've still been free in their mind, but the system tries to break their mind, and turn people against them and make them into pariahs when really they're prophets, heroes. I don't think they're gods or people who should be worshipped, but someone like Julian Assange, he is a hero in the sense that he has spread truth, unmitigated truth, as painful and horrible as it is for many people to see and hear and acknowledge. And look what's happening to him. And a lot of people don't know what's happening to him. A lot of people who know don't care. A lot of people who know think he deserves it. And a great deal of those people with those less than admirable thoughts about him claim to be for free speech and left wing and liberal and diversity and tolerance. No, they're not. They're just another form of fascist, dressed up. They're the white liberal, white moderate type people. I'm not saying they're all white. They're all exactly of one political party, but they're the kind of people that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King warned us strenuously about. And, they're here, and now they're in control of everything. The baby boomers, we've been co-opted. All the hippy-dippy revolutionary, consciousness-raising, revolutionary thoughts and art and actions that they did, the vast majority of that generation has been totally co-opted, and now they're kind of in control of the media, the government. Now there's still a lot of the old guard, the silent generation, who are still in control of things, like the really, really rich old people and the people who've been in public office for an eternity. People like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and Dianne Feinstein and Henry Kissinger, people like that who are still milling about. Those are of the older generation, but the boomers who have controlled the direction of things, that generation includes Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, all of these people. Now, Bernie Sanders is of the silent generation, so he's older, so he's rebelling really hard against his own generation, much less the boomers. But now he's becoming subsumed as well, or has become subsumed by the system that he was ostensibly combating his entire adult life. But that's a subject for a video on this other venue, not here. I don't want to, on Facebook, you can't criticize any sacred cows. And some of the people who were pariahs 5 years ago, like Bernie, are now sacred cows. So you can't criticize him. And a lot of the people who get angry at me for criticizing him for not being left wing enough or revolutionary enough, it was his terminology. A lot of them are the same people who were hating on me for supporting him in 2015 and 2016, and because he was too left wing, too revolutionary. So there's a rightward drift that keeps going, and the Overton window is just constantly shifting, and it seems like it's pushing. I don't know. Is there room for leftist thought? Is there room for leftists in this culture? Well, if each one of us speaks who is a leftist and tries, that's all we can do. So that's all I want is a voice. And I have one here, but it's a small platform, and it's a platform where I really need to. The more I speak openly, the more I have to keep my eye on the algorithms and what is said and who, etc. So I'm this part of my channel is now going to be defunct. So anyway, I'm going to move to Rockfin. I don't know what I'm going to name the channel. Probably just Henry Cover. And I'll be able to get this stuff out. And I think as passionately as I feel about it and as much time as I spend reading about it, researching it, and interfacing with it, and dealing with the ramifications daily of our fucked up system because of my own socioeconomic scenario, I should be able to put out some really good content, some strong content. I probably won't be making any friends, but I may be making some new allies. And, some of the people who may choose to be my enemies are probably people that I wouldn't want to be friends or allies with anyway. So the family-friendly Henry is still going to be on Facebook, and then the kind of, R-rated Henry will be here on YouTube. But the full unexpurgated experience will be on Rockfin. So with that, I'm going to leave, and thank you for listening. And I'm going to leave those links in the description of channels I recommend that are along these lines, so you can kind of see the general direction I'm going, and basically when I set up the Rockfin, I will include that in my links to follow me on every video. But I won't be going, go to Rockfin, or I can be a political radical, uncensored. But I'll put the link there just like I put my eBay store, etc. So anyway, thank you for listening, and peace to everyone, and take care. I don't have a catchphrase yet for say goodbye.